We're going to have some more people coming. I hope you do. Welcome. Thanks for coming to the Green Line Extension Corridor Management Committee, October 4th. I'm Charlie Zelli, Chair of Met Council and Chair of the CNC. It's great to see some new faces and some alternates. So maybe because I think Lisa Toomey coming in as alternate for Mayor Case. Well, why don't we go around the room and Lisa, start with you. Let's go around.
Lisa Toomey, I'm a council member from Green Prairie. I'm the alternate for the mayor Ron Case. And thank you for having me. I look forward to meeting.
Jim Hovland, Edina.
David Davies, Green Line Extension Project Office.
Tyler Bishop, Minnesota Department of Human Rights.
John Towle, Green Line Project Office.
Jim Alexander, Project Director. Brad Wearsome, Minnetonka Mayor. Hello, Charlie.
Hey,
Been a lot of time together.
Been a long time, I know. Since last night.
Matt Gorham, Transit Director for MnDOT's Metro District, alternate for the alternate. Mike Barnes and April Crockett are all our employee days today, so Mike Barnes is winding down. So
Mike Barnes is retiring, and before we hear about a new Metro District Division leader, you're going to help be on this committee.
yeah,
Okay.
Nick Thompson from Metro Transit, alternate to the general manager.
Robert Lilligren, Met Council District 6. So due to recent redistricting, I now represent most of South Minneapolis, 94 to city limits, east to west.
Dawn Hoffner with the Project Office, Recording Secretary.
Dr. Carter, Metro Council Member, District 3. Good to see everyone.
Well, good to see everybody. As much as we've been meeting for years, but there's sometimes been an exchange of people, but the work continues. Just a couple of housekeeping things. One is the mics are live. We are both recording and transmitting this meeting. So if you have any questions, concerns, or the public is watching, please feel free to make some comments directly to David Davies. That is david.davies@metrotransit.org. Thank you, David. You do that over the next week, and we'll make sure it's part of the official record. And all the handouts, all the presentations are part of our website, greenlineext.org. And most importantly, housekeeping, coffee has arrived, so in case those like myself who want a cup, you can, march over and get some. Which brings us to minutes that were sent out on Tuesday this week for review. They're also in your packet. If there's any additions, edits, corrections, questions, otherwise I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great, those minutes are approved. So just before we really get into the agenda, I just want to mention a couple of things. One is on September 13th, the Metropolitan Council passed a funding framework for the Green Line extension, which is bless you. Other people can get service too. Right to the house. That's great. Thank you. A funding framework for the Green Line extension, which is in the paper, so this is nothing new. But I just want to tell you how important that is for this project. We've certainly talked about it here at the CMC. We've talked about it in various venues. Always kind of had a funding gap that was unidentified, but we kind of knew really between Hennepin County and Met Council we would figure it out. Well, it was really a good timing for us just to figure it out and to reach an agreement because then we were able to ensure not only are we finishing the project, but where does the funding come from and what a difference a year makes because of the funding that came from the legislature. The October 1 that was just a couple of days ago was the start of a sales tax, both for Met Council and the relief from some of the applications from for Hennepin County. So really, Met Council now is responsible for 45% of the necessary capital funding, up to $150 million of additional funding, or for funding in the gap, and then Hennepin County was responsible for 55% of the necessary capital, up to a total contribution of $190 million. And then after that point, if there is other cost increases, it'll be split 50-50. And also, which is also part of the law, taking over Transitway operating costs, the council, Council will be funding the startup costs, which is sometimes part of the project, sometimes it's not, but we will certainly be covering that. So, you know, I'm really pleased that we have it in place. When we visited the FTA recently, in one of my many trips with Brad Wierson, we go to Washington D.C. and I tell you, the FTA was really thrilled, and they made a big deal about how, you know, we do a lot of projects around the metro, but this was something that was kind of just standing out there for them. So I think it gave them more confidence in reviewing some of the work that they're going to be starting now reviewing again. They review everything all along, and Jim will mention this, but we're now in the process of really determining what the project budget, you know, with the recovery in place, the funding recovery, all the work we've done to work with our contractors to accelerate what would have been even greater delays. And so that process is going on now. We will have a budget really determined by January. You know, and we do expect more contingency, you know, simply because of what we're experienced with the Kenilworth Trail. But with this anticipated increase in contingency, we think we got, our team has their arms around that, kind of honing in on what that is. Joan knows. And but the most important thing is that we actually now have this framework for how to fund that. And so I think ultimately it gives more confidence to the project, and we can do it, everything we're doing efficiently. So that was just kind of a highlight I wanted to mention, and also thank the council members Carter and Lilligren, who were very much part of that debate. And it was a debate. You know, how are we going to make that commitment? It wasn't, you know, it was not a rubber stamp. It was a robust conversation that it gives us more confidence and our deep appreciation of Hennepin County. I know the commissioners are coming, but they're involved. But really, that partnership is so critical and all along, and will continue to be. So with that, we should just march into the project updates, and we're going to hear both from Jim and from David. And then really great to see you, Tyler Bishop. We're going to hear from you later on, along with John Tao. So we got some new voices at the table to talk about our work. So thanks. Jim, take it away.
All right, thank you, Chair. So start off with this slide showing all the busyness that we have on this project. So as the Chair mentioned, we are going to be undertaking a risk workshop with FTA later this fall. And we anticipate that we'll be looking at this contingency piece, and the outcome would look at a revised budget as the Chair spoke of. So more to come on that, but when we last met in August, we were in the kind of final negotiations with the civil contractor, Lindmer Crossing joint venture, on the settlement agreement we've been talking about over the past several months. And it was decided with the council that authorized additional $75 million to complete some negotiations. We had been ongoing with that. But I think things are going well with both contractors. We've essentially resolving just about all the issues we had in that original settlement agreement. We've got a couple other lingering ones that are still to be resolved. We still have the CCAN delay that we talked about in 22 and 23, but we think that we have those captured in our current estimate for the project. On the system side, Alders Parsons joint venture, we also got approval from the council to issue a Part 1 change order to the tune of about $20 million. And that's kind of a subset of their their claim for the extension of time that they're experiencing due to the delays to the civil construction contract. But I can say that just out in the field, the contractors are still working feverishly get things done. We'll talk about that a little bit in terms of seeing some completions, but we feel like we're on a good path to get resolution on past issues. So I just want to post this slide, just pump up the project a little bit. Over 4,300 workers on the project as of August, and John will talk about the DBE participation, but very significant numbers there. We're talking about that DBE's been involved on this project, $246 million through July, and we're well over our goals that we had sought out for these two main contracts, the civil and systems, and we're still about 80% of the counties represented by workers through the state here. Trails, do have some updates from this slide. We did, I think, I remember it was 2 months ago when we last met, but we now have open from Beltline over to Lake, the South Cedar Lake Trail. We are looking to, even though I have in red, the two red pieces beyond that to the east and the west, we are looking to have those open yet this year. Just ask the bicycle community to have some patience as we finish that. There's still some punch list work that the contractor needs to do, and so just ask that we give the workers leeway to do their work as they finish things up. But I'm looking at Blake to Excelsior being open probably November time frame. We still have paving and fencing to do, and from Beltline over to France and the borderline between St. Louis Park and Minneapolis, we will have that. That's actually been paved, but the fencing has not been put up yet, so it's not safe to open for the public, but we're well along. And then down in the Opus area, it's officially been open for the trail system down there. The contractor still does have some punch list work to do, and we're working on that to get that completed, but folks are using the trails down there. So we are making some progress. In Minneapolis, we still have some dates that are out there quite a ways in 25, and really the Kennewick Trail is a function of the tunnel, and we're still slated to get that done into 25. So we're very optimistic for that, and we are looking at what we can do between 21st and Bryn Mawr Station if we can't have a temporary trail yet this season. We do have a detour on that piece right now, and then the pieces further east are still out in time there. So just starting out the west, the Southwest Station, the contractor is finishing up work on what's the south side, where we have a passenger drop-off and actually the ramp that gets up to the 450 stall ramp that the contractor's built. And so we're to have that completed up this year. City West Station, still like a finished product here. Still have systems work to do, but things are moving quite along in City West Station there in Prairie. Special track work just north of what we call the Minnetonka-Hopkins LRT Bridge. We have track now, LRT track placed from Southwest all the way up to Excelsior Bridge, and then from the Excelsior Bridge up to past Beltline up to about France now. So that's a pretty significant milestone to achieve. We are looking to hopefully get the track placed on Excelsior Bridge yet this year, and then the Minneapolis piece will follow on next season. Here's a further just kind of turn around from that last image. This is looking at the Shady Oak Station in Hopkins, and you can see the track work in the foreground there. And there's the Excelsior Bridge, and you can see the what's called plinths, those concrete pieces, and those darker pieces are essentially going to hold the rail in place once that gets installed later this year. Ballast track at Blake Road Station. All the stations along the west end are getting pretty much finalized from a civil perspective, but keep in mind there's still a lot of work to do with the systems contractor putting in cabling and whatnot. Ballast track, Louisiana Station. I'm seeing anybody from St. Louis Park here, but we do have Oxford, Louisiana closed right now, that intersection. The contractor is looking to finish that up and get that opened up yet this week. for paving at that intersection. But you can see the track work, and off to the right is are the bridges that we've talked about in the past for the freight rail connection over to the M&S. So things are moving along there as well. And park and rides are starting to get constructed at Louisiana Avenue Station. You can see off to the right. It's one of the park and ride locations that just received paving. And here's some images of that segment between Blake and Wooddale Avenue in terms of trail is now open on that section, thank goodness. So, ballasted track installed west of Wooddale Avenue, and then turned around to look to the east, and you see the station there. We have track in place as well, and getting the pedestrian connections established. And then over to Beltline, still in St. Louis Park, you can see the trail bridge off to the right there. And our goal is to have that opened up in that segment, opened up to France later in this season here. And here's some images of the other end of that bridge. See the approach, and we had a lot of ponds. We call them a BMP, best management practices, but it's essentially a pond to take in stormwater off to the right there. That work is now done. As I indicated, we have paved this section, but it's not ready to be open yet for the public until we get some fencing up in place there. And then more ballasted track. Just want to show you we've got things done out there. And then at West Lake Street Station, vertical circulation steel. This is for elevator and stair. We'll have that on both sides of the bridge to connect to the B line once that gets constructed. I think construction plan for next year on that. And favorite topic, Kenworth LRT Tunnel. So this is the west heading. This is first on the left there is looking toward West Lake Street Bridge off the distance, and then down below on the right there, you can see the contractors removing some soils there in that location. And just more images of Kenworth LRT Tunnel. And midway, you can see the train off to the left. That's one of the things that really gives the contractor a challenge, because when there's a train staged there, the contractor can't do any work that could potentially foul the freight rail track. So sometimes the contractor has to go on pause until that train passes through. And then the east heading, we're essentially out of the groundwater on the east heading. Look to get that buttoned up likely next year. I've talked about the construction of this of the tunnel. The contractor takes this on in segments, and essentially it's a cofferdam for each of those segments, because you may recall we're digging down to about 40 feet in the ground, and 20 feet of that is in the groundwater. So they need to kind of cordon that off to be able to take the water out eventually and work in the dry. And so we have the contractor has 12 of the 30 segments completed now with tunnel structure. So things are moving along pretty well. But I'll just caution everybody, we still have a long ways to go on this thing. It's going to slow down in the winter. We're starting to do some excavation over in the west part, getting into the groundwater, and it's just tricky getting the equipment in, so loading up the soils, getting the soils out, and getting the concrete and the steel in to do this work. So it's going to be a process, but we're still looking at the end of 25 for completion of this tunnel where we stand today. And milestone, I think just shortly after we met in August, we opened up the Sea Lake Parkway, so there is tunnel underneath this roadway, and you see the bicyclers and the cars are now using that roadway, so thank goodness that is open. And then likewise, Cedar Lake Channel, late August, we opened that up, and it's we received quite a bit of kudos to finally get that open. We're going to see, here's some images. You may recall we built 3 bridges there. So off to the left is the freight bridge that was built a couple of years ago, and then off the right you can see the LRT bridge in the distance and the pedestrian bridge in the foreground. And off to the side, we completed works progress administration, reestablishing retaining walls that were built back in the 1930s. And then up to Bryn Mawr Station, you can see we have vertical circulation off in the distance on the right there, and we have a bridge that goes over the freight tracks that carries over to the frontage road just off of 394 at Penn and Wayzata. And here's from the other angle on the left, that bridge. This is pedestrian access to the bridge at to the station at Bryn Mawr, and then on the right is a new bridge that the contractors built to connect to the Bassett Creek Valley Station from Bryn Mawr Meadows. And that replaces an existing bridge that was taken down as part of the Minneapolis agreements. And off in the distance on the right there is a batch plant that's being taken down. That was serving concrete for the east part of the project, and contractors now seeing that they don't need that anymore and will continue to get concrete delivered from local batch plants, but that batch plant is currently being demowed. That'll allow us to finish up the corridor protection and continue with the LRT work. And just west of Bassett Creek Valley Station, the contractor's starting to put in some special track work. And then vertical circulation in Bassett Creek Valley connecting to the bridge there. And then Glenwood Avenue is another piece that has a lot of interest when this roadway is going to open. We're substantially complete with the bridges. We're coordinating with the county off in the distance. Kind of hard to tell in this image, but there's work to be done at the Railston-Glenwood intersection, and that is currently underway. The county had some challenges with Excel utilities getting those out of the way, so we're still fine-tuning the date when this is going to open. It had thought maybe later in October. We'll have to stay tuned on that because the days are ticking by, and I'm not sure we'll get it done by October. But we're all gonna work together to try to get that done as best we can. Here's another image of one of the bridges. So just back up, but at Glenwood, essentially two bridges that the contractor has built, and going in between there is where the rail is. That's an LRT bridge that bisects the two roadway bridges. And here's an extension of that as we head over to Royalston. We're all at grade crossing. And then the last of the 16 stations, Royalston Avenue Farmers Market Station, coming well along there. And our last of the 29 new structures, this is the 5th Avenue 7th Street Bridge that essentially is getting pretty close to being completion here with some duct bank work that's been underway. So maybe I'll pause there if there are any questions on the civil construction.
Any questions? Boy, I would say a majority of those slides look like it's done. I mean, it's amazing how it's changed over the past year or so.
Right, and that's going to be our challenge. Is we had this on Central Corridor too. Is everything looks done, but they're still not done. We have a lot of work to do, and I'll remind folks that we're still looking at the idea of doing some testing out at the west end. As we know, the Kenilworth LRT tunnel is really the critical path. And our hope is that we can do some testing to essentially get those pieces out of our way, out of the west, essentially from Beltline over to Southwest Station, and then likewise from the main line at Target Field and reaching over to about Grand Island Station. If we can get those areas tested ahead of time, I think that's money well spent to get that taken care of. So then we just have the tunnel connection. We'll ultimately have to do full testing from A to B in terms of the whole alignment, but getting integration testing done in those two segments, I think, will help us quite a bit. So just a couple of images on systems. Aldrich Parsons, the joint venture, they've been working feverishly putting in overhead catenary system poles. You see a couple of images in Eden Prairie here. Essentially, you have wire installed from Southwest Station all the way up to 9 Mile Creek, so things are progressing pretty well on that front. And then traction power substations, I think they have 7 of the 19 traction power substations installed thus far. We're hoping to get number 8 installed in the kind of the north end of Opus later this month. And so the contractor is making good ground there. And just another image, this is just north of Opus Station. All right, well, that concludes my presentation.
Any questions? Oh, thanks.
Good morning, folks. I'm David Davies, the Manager of Public Involvement for the project. Just have a couple slides to discuss what we've been doing over the past couple of months. To review, for 2023 so far, we've had 180 meetings and events, and that includes meetings with property owners out on site to coordinate construction activities, and also tabling events like community festivals and farmers markets, as well as our own tours that we have led throughout the summer. So the outreach team continues to be out there with our construction team as well, and also community stakeholders to discuss the progress that's being made on the project. We're also still continuing to communicate construction updates and impacts through our weekly construction update. That will pivot to a bi-weekly format coming up this fall, as we have still have construction activities going on throughout the entire year, but fewer impacts on a week-to-week basis during the kind of winter season. But we're still averaging about 30% open rate, which is pretty positive. That means we're still getting the word out about construction as we progress. Just a note here, and this is kind of an overall note, that 2023 is still very much in the throes of construction, but going into 24, we're going to start to pivot a little bit and talk a little bit, looking forward, not just thinking about what's happening right now on the project, but getting folks and community members used to thinking about what's going to be happening as we progress to opening day. So maybe a little bit more storytelling about what's to come, and not just, kind of getting people out talking about how things are getting built. Just a kind of a focus on our tour season, which is wrapping up. Very successful once again. We've been doing these tours now for a few summers. We held 15 public walking tours, plus we were able to organize a few tours with some of our city and stakeholders and other agency stakeholders. There you've got a couple images from our corridor tour with representatives from the city of Edina, as well as a tour with residents of Park Lane in Minneapolis for the Kenilworth Tunnel. So we've been able to get folks out this year to show the progress and receive some great feedback from communities, from community members as we've been going out on these tours. Again, I think it'll be interesting to start talking about really specific levels of interest next year, and not just kind of getting folks out and talking about general construction. I'll just mention, one specific piece of feedback we got from someone who was involved with the Minnesota Streetcar Museum, and he was really excited to be out on that tour in doing the Minnetonka-Hopkins Bridge. And then he was also following up later and I really want to just talk about systems, and you're like, that's cool. We'll get you out there and talk about systems next year. So there's certainly an appetite to dig down deeper into some of these aspects of the project, and we're willing to facilitate that as we move forward. So as I said, we'll continue throughout the winter. We're always happy to come out to events as folks plan them. And we're looking forward to telling more stories, not just construction, but just getting the word out, continuing to get the word out, and continuing to engage folks about the progress as we aim toward opening day in 27. Brief update. I'll take any questions that folks have.
David, you and your team have done a great job. I have to say, I've been on a few of these tours. This project is not just the project you go visit. It's just a series of projects, along the way. I mean, we all know Hopkinsbury, or looking at the Excelsior Bridge, a lot different than when we're along the Kenilworth Tunnel. But I have to say, with the residents, this picture, because I was there, these are neighbors who are right next to the project, and they are, obviously deeply affected, and maybe early on really engaged in trying to stop the project. But let me just say, there's a shift in the project's really happening, to a great curiosity, how does it actually get built? And then kind of excited, there's going to be a beautiful landscape, plaza on top of this tunnel. So there is an end to this. And I think that there was a really giddy mood and interest from people. So it was really great to get up close. And I think they really felt that, built confidence in the team. So really important that we're doing that.
It feels good we used to bring out the roll plots, right? The aerial roll plots on all of our tours at the beginning, because we would still be out there and saying, well, over there you're going to see a station. Over there you're going to see this. And now we get to just bring people out, and pretty much everywhere across the project,
There it is.
you're seeing it. You don't need any other visual aids. You just get to see it, and that's really, that hits for folks. Yeah.
Right, well, more tours to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
And outreach. So now we're going to hear from John Dow, and who, as we all know, is part of our Council Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity, but really appreciate being joined by Tyler Bishop, who you just met, who is the co-chair of our workforce DBE group, and really resides within the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, which is totally our partner in some of this work. And so I don't know who's going. Maybe John, you're going first, but get on.
Thank you. I think we're pretty happy to have MDHR here to talk about workforce. I think back in June there was some questions that we received, so we're happy to have them here supporting and to share more about some of their observations. So here is the table for DBE participation on the civil and the systems contracts. I think the civil is, nearing or a little bit under 80% complete. So we're working with the contractor, and we've been doing commercially useful function site visits with the DBEs out in the field, and working with them to just as we're nearing the end here for some of the DBEs who completed their work, we want to make sure that they're getting paid on time. So some of those things we're trying to button up on here. And then participation is looking really healthy, and that creates, for us, it's a good sign as we get closer to the end of the project, because when we get there and there's not a lot of work left, it's hard to play catch up. So. And then here's the DBE contracts. There's not much change here for DBE contracts since the last time I presented. I know that last time we were here, Mayor Weirsom had a question about women, POC women participation. So for the DBE contracts, if you look on here in the left column, we have the women participation there, and POC women participation is about at 5 million. It's less than 0.5% of the overall project. And I think for the DBE program overall, this is one of the things that we are trying to tackle, because it's part of the system that's here, and it's a place that we do need to do more work on. And in future contracts is where the opportunity is to change these type of things. Part of the challenge here is with low bid contracting and the DBE program, it doesn't really differentiate between women and minority or POC women and non-POC women. It just, everybody who has the classification of DBEs is considered a DBE, and the contractor gets to pick who's going to be on their roster as they're deciding the scope of their work. So that, I believe, is my part of the presentation for DBE contracting. If there are any questions, I can answer them. Otherwise, I will hand it off to Tyler.
I've got one, John, for
Sure.
you. More of an overall observation on your part from managing all of this portion of the contract, $282+ million in work done by DBEs. And I'm wondering what, if you were going to advise US DOT or FTA on how they could improve the DBE program to kind of achieve more active participation and training for people to be able to participate. What would be your thoughts? Maybe it's a little bit of a gotcha. I didn't mean to be a gotcha question. Something you want to think about, But how do we go about improving what's already a pretty good effort? Make it an opportunity that's even broader in scope and more extensive in scope.
Chair. I would say, I think in the past, the council, I think in the state of Minnesota too, we've done some of these different ways to develop DBEs. One of the things that has been recommended by the FTA is mentor protege, and encouraging a prime contractor or large general contractors to mentor smaller DBEs, and encouraging them to mentor intentionally, women POC-owned businesses as part of ways to develop them into the field. That would be one of the great ways to really open up doors, because those mentor-protege relationships really grow and blossom, because when you work with somebody like that, you have an established relationship and you're training them how to do the work you want them to do. So then when you work on a different project later on down the road, you trust and you know the work that they're bringing forth, the quality that they're bringing forth, because you've trained them in doing it. So those are some of the things that has been recommended by the FTA. We always encourage it with a lot of the 4 partner agencies that do the DBE program here in the metro area. I think along with that, there's been other things that's been done in the past, but we definitely want to further build out support for these businesses as they're growing. Hennepin County has a Elevate program too that is helping to develop small businesses, and the Met Council, we just recently had a contract for a small business consultant to help coach small businesses, and that is one of the ways that we are trying to change and encourage and help support these small businesses in growing into their full potential.
Great. Councilmember Lilligren.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks for your question, Marilyn. Very excellent response, John. And just to assure this group that at the policy level, the council is very interested in responding to what you asked, Jim. And through our management committee, which is sort of our ways and means or our budget committee, we work with several relevant offices within HR, procurement, diversity and inclusion on some of the strategies that John just laid out, and in expanding those strategies to sort of move those numbers in the same way.
Great. Brad.
Chair Zelli, thank you. I appreciate your comments on a couple of fronts. One, the comment made earlier about being ahead of our objectives is so important, because playing catch up really is tough late in the game. So I think it's great that we've exceeded our objective, and I think that's important. And I also appreciate your comment on my question last month. I think if you're a DBE, being a DBE in 2 categories probably does not add an added benefit. And so I think the question that I asked last month really had to do with the differentiation at the bottom of the list that says white women as opposed to women in general. So that kind of raised the question that I raised about a subset. But women in general, I think, not designating white women specifically caused me to pose the question, but I appreciate that. Yeah, you don't have to check 2 boxes to be a DBE business, so I just want to add a little clarity to the reason for my question.
All right, thanks, man. Any other questions, thoughts? Tyler.
Well, my name is Tyler Bishop. I'm with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, supervisor for the E&I team. Thank you all for having me here today. Really appreciate the invitation. So looking at the July numbers, total civil, we'll start with civil workforce participation. There were just shy of 66,000 hours in the books. You can see that for the month, 6.72% of those hours were completed by women, which is just shy of the contract to date average of 8.19%. Goal obviously being 20 there. Likewise with the POCI for the month of July, 23.96% of the work hours were completed by people of color or indigenous, and the average, that's pretty much on par, just a shade above what we've been seeing throughout the life of the project. And then you'll see that the 1.98% and then 0.75% of folks were unspecified in that category. I think there's more, and I'm sure folks have questions regarding this data, so I will hold. We'll move on to the next slide, and then we can kind of circle back, do all the questions at once, I think. The civil workforce participation breakdown percentage, so again, just shy of that 66,000 hours there. You'll see the biggest piece of the pie there, the 69.11% completed by white men. You've got 1.98 unspecified, as was shown in the slide previous. White women consisted of 4.95%, women of color 1.73%, and then POCI men, rounding it out at last 22.23%. So that's for the civil. Moving to systems, they're just kind of getting rolling here, so the numbers that they have to really accumulate out of is just getting started, so which is why it's the numbers at this point. I don't know that you can necessarily put civil up against systems and look at them apples to apples just because of quantity that we have to compare. But for the month of July, just over 4,000 hours completed. Total about 33,500 for what they've done so far. Month of July, 10.8% women completion of the hours, and again, that's of the 4,000 hours. What they've put in so far, about 13.26, so pretty happy with that number. Yeah. And then for their POCI participation in the month of July, big jump above the average, 26.12%, and they're running Life of Project 19.66. And then you got that 2.58 and 1.65 unspecified there as well. Breakdown of the systems participation percentage. So again, biggest trend we see here, the white men consisting of the 63.3% of the 4,000 hours completed, 2.58 unspecified, 8% were completed by white women, POCI women, just 9 hours, so 0.22%, and then POCI men, 25.92%.
I'm sure, Tyler, we're all see we're behind the goal, and the goal is aspirational. But how do you think we compare, this workforce compares with other large projects in Minnesota, like MnDOT and other, you're exposed to other projects?
Big
one.
I think it's hard because there aren't many other projects to pull from the bucket that really can stand on par with the size and just scope of this project. All in all, I think that it's about on par. I don't think it's swaying too far to one end of either spectrum.
Yeah.
To be honest, one of the conversations, and I joined this project last June, so it's been a little over a year. And one of the first things that we really did bring to the subcommittee, the workforce committee that John and I are on, and David, is this idea of, even at this point in the project, the numbers, and kind of to John's point of playing catch up after the fact, at a certain point the needle's only going to move so much with what you've got left kind of in the tank, right, and the opportunities that are left on the table. And I think the cautionary tale that the department has issued to the contractors, and what we're not going to settle for, is having that be an excuse to just settle for mediocrity for the remaining life of the project. Right. So the goals are still the goals, and the expectations of contractors are still the same expectations as they were of day one as they are now. I think the forecasting, the realistic, where's it going to land, if all stars align, where would we end up, and still, to be frank, falling short of the goals, that's not an excuse in the department's mind to just kind of mail it in. So we have still continued to uphold the same kind of routine and cadence and expectations and touch points, and really we've increased those with the contractors, especially now with the London McCrossin joint venture. It's you guys are kind of coming to a close here. You got about 20-ish% left that you have to do, so finishing strong, really leaving on a high note. There have been a lot of things that we've taken away that have been extremely valuable that we are going to be applying to the blue line. So I think, numbers are numbers, and they certainly can paint whatever kind of picture narrative that you would like them to paint. But at the end of the day, I think that there was a lot of good that came out of what we've learned from the project and being able to apply from an industry perspective, from an execution perspective, from an accountability perspective, on multiple levels. So I think that really, in my mind, is the biggest takeaway from all of it is not solely honing in and focusing on, well, we didn't meet the goals. It is what it is.
Yeah.
What can we take away from it to ensure further success, to give future projects like the Blue Line a much better fighting chance of, when that is said and done, having met the goals? Because that really is an indication, in my opinion, of the furthering and betterment of the industry. Because there are a lot of reasons that you could point to as to why it may be feasibly just impossible to attain a 32 and 20, or why logistically it just wasn't able to do that. And those are the things that we've lately been really honing in and focusing. If it's a matter of future pipeline and availability, then that needs to be addressed, because we're not going to roll into the next project with either the Blue Line or the upcoming capital projects or anything that's coming up and magically have a greater source of population to pull from for trades.
Right.
And that's really where I think a lot of the effort needs to be kind of shifted to. And unfortunately, that does mean that, what does that mean for Southwest? Well, not much, because we are where we are. But we really have taken a lot of what we've learned from the Southwest project and shifted toward, okay, what does this mean for future projects for the state of Minnesota and the people, the communities, small businesses, and how can we improve? Is kind of where we've done.
That's really a great response, and I think, speaking for my fellow council members, I think, at some point, we really would love to have that conversation about lessons learned, because it really is, as you point out, some of this is long-term pipeline issues that we won't have the payoff for a number of years, but that's no excuse not to lean into that. And then you think about the magnitude of this project, you're right, we're not going to bend these numbers much, but even 20% left compared to any other project is still big, So your point is like, yeah, now's not the time to lay that off. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Mr. Schick, thanks. Just to really support your response there, and thanks, Tyler, for your views on it, and the fact that the ecosystem that we're working in might not really support us meeting these goals is really evidence of the problem, right? And so I really like these conversations about sort of getting upstream and making sure that we're prepared to meet our goals, and just to make it clear, like the chair says, you have a partner in the Met Council in doing that. And just to go back maybe 20 years ago or so, when I was on the Minneapolis City Council, and we were monitoring large transit investments like this, and it seemed like we kind of waited till we got to this point to try to meet those goals, when it was really impossible to do so. And just to note that we are making progress, even though it might not be as much progress as we'd like to see. We are trying to improve the system, so thank you.
Yeah, right, yeah. Nick?
So you mentioned Blue Line a couple times. We're about maybe 3 years from that construction contract. What are some things we should be doing in 2024 to build that pipeline? And then is some of that around our procurement documents themselves that gives us ability to develop, the contractors, what they're bidding on to help improve those numbers?
I think, great question. So the best answer, I guess, I could provide is one thing that we have spent some time focusing that I think would be beneficial for Blue is really looking at what is the area, what trades are going to be involved, what's needed for this project. Is it going to mirror what was needed for Southwest? Is it going to be a little bit different? So really hone in on what is going to be required, who's going to need to be in the room and at the table, and then of those groups of folks, what is the availability, what is the pipeline, is the bench strength of each one of those groups that is going to be required to be present. Because right now would be a time, if you identify the top 3 trades that you're going to need, and you notice that their current availability just isn't going to get you there, then now would be the time to be like, okay, what do we have to do to promote strengthening that bench so that we have the available workforce to pull from when the time comes that we need it, rather than waiting and being like, oh, we really needed more people there. Well, now again, you're behind the ball, and it's going to take time to find, recruit, get them certified with what they need. It's just time, and the project's going to have started rolling at that point.
That's good to hear. I mean, we're at a point where we probably can determine how similar it is to Green Line. They're obviously way more structured on Green Line, but there's a lot of similarity to it.
Yeah.
So we could forecast trades probably for Blue Line now. I think we could.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Chair. You know, I just happened to see a presentation yesterday from the state demographer who was talking about the ratio of jobs available to potential applicants, and it's almost 3 to 1. So that, you know, because we're not in a recession, you know, there really aren't a lot of, well, there aren't a lot, there aren't enough people for the job. So that's one of those. And one of the other interesting things that this woman spoke of was the fact that women in Minnesota, they're like it's like a top 5 state for participation within the workforce. I want to say maybe 81%. So can we read some of this data in that lens statewide from a workforce point of view?
I'm not sure I fully understand your question.
Well, here we're saying, you know, we're having difficulty getting women into the workforce, especially people of color. But for a state, generally, there isn't a huge population to draw from because there's so many women in Minnesota compared to nationally available. And I think we're one of the, maybe even the highest demographically employed for women. And so there isn't a huge pool to draw from, and some of those also include people who are not even able to work. So I think the 81% is even probably higher than that. And so there's this data, then there's also the data that, you know, we're not in a recession. The unemployment rates are very low.
Right.
And there's just more jobs out there than there were people to even.
Right.
And so
Okay.
if we were in a session, maybe we would draw more people. I'm asking you, I don't know the answer to this.
Sure. You know, I'm not sure. I think that's kind of one of the challenges that has been frequently discussed is how do you attract women in construction to want to come in and be a bricklayer and haul wheelbarrows of concrete and bricks around the job site. It's not exactly the most appealing thing, and it's hard to recruit for. But it's kind of the task at hand. So, and I think that's something that is a collaborative kind of task. MDHR doesn't necessarily have the magical answer for that. I think that's going to be something that is really in the hands of the contractors that know the industry the best, and then the unions, and then entities like Building Strong, really those that are connected to the community in terms of pulling them in to get involved in the trades. Because it's a challenge, no denying that, and unfortunately I don't have a great solution for that. Wish I did.
Any other questions, thoughts?
I was just,
Go ahead, Doug.
That is what I was worried about. What were the barriers and what's our long-term strategy in terms of trying to lessen some of those barriers? Because I know that a strategy that's often employed is they'll look at nearby metro areas, because sometimes, like years ago, I was recruiting engineers, and they had a downturn in the engineering population in Louisiana, so I was able to recruit Louisiana engineers to Philadelphia. So sometimes we can identify areas, metro areas that are not that far away, where we can, where they have maybe, because everyone's short,
Right.
but maybe the shortage is not so great when we can pull from. Are we looking at similar strategies in terms of that?
You know, I think in terms of recruitment strategy, that's really going to fall on the contractors. You know, we meet MDHR, the department meets with them to discuss what good faith efforts they've been putting forth to increase their participation for women and people of color, but in terms of the actual execution of what are you doing in terms of actual activity, that would be a question that each contractor would have to kind of be able to answer and attest to what they're committing to and what they have done. I think that there is industry knowledge in terms of like what we've seen, what people have done that have been successful in the past, then sharing that wealth of knowledge in spaces such as, advisory committees and open forums and things like that. We also know and have seen what people have done that have not been effective. So let's stop doing things that have proven themselves to not work. And that's the sort of knowledge that I think that people like myself and the council can have that history and that observation to share with folks. But in terms of actual execution of what our contractors doing to go out and build and recruit and retain, I think that retainage is a huge piece that gets lost a lot too. That would be to each contractor that they would have to kind of answer for that.
Jim? This whole conversation is really fascinating, I think. So you got the labor component, which goes to the creation of the ecosystem that creates the pipeline to be able to have the people coming in that are adequate number to be able to fulfill your goals. And you've got small businesses that are minority businesses that are suppliers and or some other kind of provider. I know women that run they have big fleets of dirt trucks. They've been doing it for years. J.D. Donovan, woman-owned business. There's a guy in Edina who was he's from West Africa. He's an engineer. He worked for 3M for 16 years, ran their plant in Alexandria, and decided he wanted to have his own business. Charlie and I have talked about this. He started a business where he does all that traffic signaling and warning, does safe routes to school projects, and he's had the most difficult time getting going, despite tremendous ability and equipment, and former people from MnDOT working for him, former people from 3M working for him. He doesn't get the kind of traction he needs because his pricing, when he goes to bid on projects with the general contractors, his pricing is high compared to people that might be 3-4 times his size. So there's no mandatory sort of range in which he can be hired. It's not like he's gouging, it's just that 3M is selling him signed material at a higher cost than they're selling it to somebody who's probably grossing $100 million a year, and it's a woman-owned business. So much of this, as I understand it, is sort of good faith. When you talk to MnDOT, it's you tell the contractor, okay, a certain percentage of this business should be minority set aside, DBE. But it's a good faith effort to get the DBA work filled at that level. And what I've heard historically is that MnDOT doesn't really see that percentage fulfilled because it's a good faith effort on the part of the general contractor. So all of this stuff kind of swirls around, and there's no kind of safety net here for people as we're trying to get them going and up and prospering. In my opinion, like we should have. There should be some level of business that they can attain at a reasonable cost or based on their pricing that they're going to be guaranteed that they can do if they're otherwise qualified to do the work. And I don't know if I explained that very well, but John, you made me think about it when you were talking about some of the things you talked about. So that's one of the challenges that I see too, along with just basic sufficient numbers of people in the workforce that you'd like to see involved in getting ahead that aren't in the majority of the population.
Sure.
Go ahead, man.
To kind of reiterate and support what Jim's saying, when we're talking about disadvantaged businesses, they tend to be small businesses. And in a low bid environment, it's hard to be a low bidder when you don't have scale. And so there's kind of an oxymoron there in terms of, okay, we have this objective to meet a disadvantaged business goal, but almost by definition, they're going to be smaller businesses with less scale. So they've got a higher hill to climb. So maybe it's going back to the beginning and say, how do we help those businesses get scale? And perhaps, maybe to secure our DBE goals, we have to say, well, we have to look at things in addition to being, a low bid environment, because that costs taxpayer money. There's no question about that. None of us like to spend excess taxpayer money, but the words and the music have to match. And I think the point we're making here is maybe they don't quite match in the way we do things. And so perhaps we have to look at it a different way.
Yeah, that's really great point. Thanks. Robert?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I just really appreciate that we're pausing and having this conversation. I appreciate people sharing their perspectives, and this is kind of I love the saying, what is it? The words match the music? Is that what you just said, Mayor?
The words and the music need to match.
Words and the music need to match, and they just don't, right? And so, to what the mayors were talking about, we need to get really kind of surgical about what the barriers are and to acknowledge we have influence on this ecosystem, and through setting these goals, through politically supporting these goals, to trying to find ways to meet them. That's important. We have indirect influence on the environment. Jim brought up labor. Labor knows they need to diversify their workforce to survive, so we have a great ally there. At the council level, we've been looking at things of maybe unbundling contracts, so that matter of scale isn't quite so decisive in this. What's within the law? Carving out pieces of contracts to make them specifically available to a certain type or level of respondent, of contractor, and technology. The state, the feds operate at a certain level, the state at a level, but at the more local level, counties, met councils, cities, we may control some other tools that can help build up that pool of potential respondents and applicants. And so I just, to meet our DBE goals, so I just love that we're taking this seriously and we're having this conversation. We can do something about it. So it's great to feel that we have allies here.
Yeah, great conversation. Tyrell?
One of the things that's been done in the past is a bit larger contractor or partner with a DBE business, and they'll subcontract a piece of the work, and I'm sure we're doing some of that, but maybe we can promote more of that, or ways we can promote more of that. Maybe there are ways of giving a larger contractor an incentive to do that. So more of that is being done, because if I have a small business and I'm so signaling, I think that was his specialty. Maybe there's a larger project and we can carve him up enough of a piece so that he can remain viable. Because if we look at, just look at small businesses in general during the pandemic, every time I drive around, I see a lot of empty stores where I used to see people having viable businesses. Kind of makes me sad, because I understand what they're going through and have gone through, and we need to take ownership of that work, because we don't want to get to a position where we say our goals are going down because we weren't aggressive enough in doing things as much as we could.
And I think there are some programs, maybe MCUB, so it's not a federal project, where there's some flexibility on this pricing. And the mayor points out, you can pay a little bit more, but that might be limited to 10%. So I mean, there are programs that these guys recognize, but having that flexibility is great.
Yeah, Chair. I was having a conversation with Hennepin County, or one of the contracting folks from Hennepin County, and one of the things he shared was that what they were doing over there was best value contracting, and they added on small business participation as a factor in consideration. And he shared some of the results was that the small business participation was a lot larger, like increased by 20% after they implemented that versus before. And that was something that was a positive note, and good to hear that they have this practice over there, and sharing strategies and talking about like, well, how do we do that for our contracts? What is the risks that we take on, and what are the benefits and what's needed in the contract language to be able to put forth something like that. And then in terms of workforce, we've also been looking at the way people have done workforce recruitment across the country. One of the great things that I recently attended a webinar on was local hiring preferences, and being able to designate, or with supporting data, of course, areas of disparity, and targeting those areas to say, we want to intentionally add this on as something that can support the workforce goals, because MDHR has their workforce goals there. But then for the council, if we do a local hiring preference, we can then intentionally support moving towards that goal, and the outcomes from that has the potential of carrying on into future projects, right? Because once you get somebody into the industry, they build up experience, there's more opportunity for them to stay in the business rather than just move on. So those are some of the things that we've been discussing, and it's an opportunity.
Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned best value. That is something we now have authority at the council to do, and so we are exploring that. For that one of the very reasons is allows us to maybe not just do low bid and achieve other goals, which is great. The other portion is this sales tax now will allow us to maybe do some of our projects without federal, and so I think we'll bring more flexibility to certain projects where we just use non-federal funding, which gives us, I think, a lot more flexibility. So I think we're on the cusp of some new opportunities that we did not have when Green Line started. Which is great.
It's a great conversation. Really, really appreciate it. And thanks for the updates. Tyler, great seeing you here. John and Jim and David, really appreciate all the work you're doing. We have a meeting scheduled for December 6th. Work continues. We hope good weather keeps this construction season, keeps it going. In the meantime, if you have any questions, reach out to any of us, or visit the project website. But council members, alternative.
Charlie, you want to give us a ICLV, you must have been on that trip too.
I was, yeah.
Yeah.
Give us a quick update on that trip to Philadelphia?
Yeah, Mayor, right, you want to say a few words? I know Will Roach was going to be here, but he couldn't make it. But
Well, I'll comment. So we had the intercity leadership visit to Philadelphia, and we had a nice booklet that was put together for the trip that did some comparing and contrasting between the Twin Cities area and Philadelphia. And Philadelphia, I've spent some time in Philadelphia, but not a ton of time, and so this was a nice look at the city. It's a vibrant city. I think it's doing well. It's a bigger metro area, clearly, than the Twin Cities, and they deal with more poverty issues than we deal with in our community. But they have robust transit. Comcast was one of the sponsors. They have a huge presence there, and I think we think of Comcast as the cable and web provider. But they also own the Philadelphia Flyers. They also own venues. I mean, they own stadiums and so forth. We got some tours of those. But yesterday morning, we really had the most interesting presentation in my view, and it was how Philadelphia is, to use the word intentionally, again, intentionality, working on gun violence in their city, and about how they have a process, and they brought people together, they brought different groups together, but they've taken a very analytical approach. And the biggest thing that they did as part of that was to identify the people, the segment of the population, very specifically on who is most likely in their community to get shot. And they said that statistically, there are certain variables that are available and measurable, and it's a relatively small number of people who are at risk.
And so when you get to that, when you look at the whole population of, several million people in that community, they can get it down to maybe, fewer than 10,000 people who would fit in this target group. And whenever you can make a group that small and understand that group, you can put resources against that group to reduce violence. And they had measurable results, and there were a couple of other cities that they cited as examples. But that was fascinating to me because, every large city in America is concerned, and small cities too, are concerned about gun violence in their cities. And I thought that was just a very, very fascinating presentation. And because some of these issues that we face, they feel hopeless, and they're not hopeless. It's the word intentionality and bringing focus to these challenges that can really make a difference. And I was very impressed with that presentation. Charlie, what else do you have to add?
I agree with that presentation. It was, and the interesting thing about those that are the most at risk to be shot, they're also the ones who might be doing the shooting. So I mean, it's something we kind of know here, but really getting the coalition of community foundations, the city, more than just the police. This is a kind of a quasi-independent effort. And the fact that they're actually a little bit outside of government made them an opportunity to be a little more nimble and to lean into things. And it kind of fit that ICLV multi-sector kind of way of approaching problems. So that was really good. I thought another highlight for me was some of the roundtables yesterday. I sat with the director of homeless engagement for SEPTA, the transit system. And I have to tell you, I have several packages for Leslie and a few others. I've really learned a lot of what we're doing for our homeless action team, but what they're doing kind of outside of their police to really face and deal with those that are most vulnerable. And they really talk about it as people of vulnerability. They're not saying unsheltered, mental illness, drug. It's just like, who is, again, the most vulnerable, and how do you kind of, with a humanitarian way, provide some services with a lot of this we're kind of thinking about with our transit safety intervention project, which met last week. But this is at a scale with a coordinated effort that is pretty impressive. As an example, they've worked with Drexel University, and now a lot of other universities want to get in on it, to have medical students do hours doing outreach with big shirts that say, health navigator, and actually helping treat and care for people. And then ultimately, and they're not shy about it, is to say that these services aren't on the train. They're somewhere else. So we need to get you off this system. Don't go here, but this is where people are. And it was kind of making that a safe place for everybody, customer experience, but also taking an approach that's not just enforcement, And so I thought that was really, really interesting. And in fact, the general manager of SEPTA, Leslie Richards, I think I've convinced her to come out here on November 3rd for our safety summit we're doing with CTS. So I think there's a lot to learn from some of the systems, and Philadelphia was really a great place to come back with some good ideas. So we'll be talking more about that.
Isn't Baltimore coming in here?
Baltimore's coming, where's Sam? Next week.
Next week, yes.
Baltimore and Baltimore's mayor and others are coming in, and we'll have an opportunity to visit with them, and they'll learn from us. So, yeah. And I think these cross-urban regional collaborations, we've been doing that for years, but right now, I think there's a lot we can take away.
Is that an ICLV thing that Baltimore is involved in, or is there another host group here for that? Sam, who's hosting Baltimore?
They're actually organizing that through their Metropolitan Planning Organization. Is the organizing entity about that. So I think it's almost very similar and modeled after some of these trips. They're bringing about 60 people from both business and public sector coming in to learn a little bit of how we're doing things. So Chair will be addressing that group and talking a little bit about some of the opportunities and challenges, but they're also here to learn about affordable housing. Baltimore, very similarly, unfortunately, also had a shooting yesterday, so very timely in terms of some of those conversations.
Yeah, so I mean, the regional council mayors hasn't heard one thing about this. I don't think. We should be looped in on that. I know that mayor.
Yes.
Yeah, you should be, definitely.
Brad's the co-chair now of that regional council mayor, so.
Well, we'll give you their agenda, both
That'd be
Brad
great.
and Karen. We'll get that to you.
That'd be
Yeah,
great.
because I think we'd like to participate.
Yeah, we definitely would. And, Chair Zelli pointed out, we had great roundtables, and I sat in on one on housing. And, Chad Weinstein, who does consulting for cities, he has a saying that if you've been to one city, you've been to one city. And I think it's really an astute statement. I mean, we all work on a lot of the same stuff, but each city is different. And the learning to go to a different city and learn. And when we were talking about housing, I asked if anyone in this roundtable and the speakers on the roundtable, if they had did anything with land trusts for affordable housing. Well, they do land banking because the land that the city of Philadelphia owns for individual housing opportunities is worth between $0 and $10,000 a lot. So a land trust where you take the land out of the equation is almost valueless because they have so much low value land spread out throughout their communities that it's just a different ballgame. And so, different solutions, different approaches because the situations in different cities really are different. And so it's fascinating to appreciate that and understand because you can learn from those different approaches. And maybe there's some takeaways there that can help us as we figure out affordable housing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So did they say that the people most likely to be victims of violence were Philadelphia Eagles fans?
No, they're
Well,
the perpetrators.
as you can imagine, Lester Bagley had a few stories that he was weren't happy experiences, but they were.
I can relate to some of those things.
Yeah, the Philadelphia fans. Yeah. Well, we went to a preseason hockey game with the Flyers, and we had a nice time with each other. But it wasn't a robust audience, and they're playing the Bruins, which is kind of cool.
But it was preseason hockey.
Preseason hockey, yeah.
You can get preseason hockey tickets to the Wild pretty inexpensively.
But not baseball games.
No.
Go Twins. All right, what a wonderful conversation, what a wonderful group. And but I know we also have more to your day. So with that, I think this meeting's adjourned. But stay tuned. Really appreciate everybody's involvement in this project and all the others. But,
that Rodney Dangerfield's line from the Philadelphia Flyers from the Broad Street Bullies. He went to a fight and a hockey game broke out.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, they have all these pictures out in murals, at Xfinity Live. There's all these guys with big smiles and no teeth.